So I'm going to have to divert just for a minute. I'm going to ask you to forgive me. My wife and I were married in July of 1973. Yeah, that's great, right? That's great news. The bad news was that was the last year the New York Knickerbockers won the championship. And so if I sound a little hoarse right now, it's because I was screaming and yelling and carrying on last night. And I'm originally from New York, so you have to forgive us if we don't know how to act, because it's been a long time. So that's my name, but what's encouraging about it is, beforehand, anticipating this, I put it up in orange and blue. Okay? Those are the Knicks colors. So I thank you. I can go on about it. I don't want to do that. If you got 3-4 hours after church, you want to talk to me about it, I'll be happy to tell you every incident over the 53 years, okay? But we're not going to do that this morning. Once again, it's so good to see you guys. So nice to be up here in Delaware. And on top of that, it's summer. It's summer. And I love summertime. I do. It's warm. Everything's in bloom in summertime. Outside activities, I love doing all of that stuff. Summertime is also the time for sermons with like a movie-based theme, right? I don't want to break that flow. So I have a movie-based theme too, but it's not quite what you might expect, okay? So I'm not a superheroes guy. I don't know the difference between Iron Man and X-Men. Are those two characters? Two different characters? Okay, I don't know. I don't know. But I do love movies. So I entitled this message, It's Complicated, from the movie of the same name, okay? And there's the photo from that movie, okay? Now, it's a romantic comedy. I love romantic comedies. And some of you may have seen it. It was done in 2009, but if you haven't seen it, I'll just give you a quick synopsis, okay? So the main characters are Jane and Jake. That's them. They're on the screen. They have 3 grown children, but they've been divorced for 10 years. Jake's remarried. He has a small son with his new wife. Then Jane and Jake unexpectedly begin an illicit love affair with one another. All right? It's not a spiritual movie, I understand. Okay. But obviously, things get complicated. And it is interesting to me how much you can learn even from a movie that has as its primary theme adultery. I like it because it sort of demonstrates just what the title says about life, right? Life's complicated. It gets complicated. Now, your life may not be complicated by the same factors or the same situations as this movie. But there's always something, right? There's always something going on. Never a dull moment. It's an old expression. If it's not one thing, it's another. It became an expression because it's true. And, we try our best to sort of sail smoothly through life, doing the best we can. Sometimes we're just trying to sail smoothly through a day. But something always seems to get in the way, doesn't it? There's some problems, there's some conflicts, there's some unexpected situation. Always seems to happen, and I know it's not just me. I know it's happening to you guys too, right? You get in your car, you're on I-95, right? You cruising along at 72 degrees, you got the sun roof open, you got your tunes going, everything's great for about 10 miles. And then what? Something unexpected happens, right? There's a big pothole, there's an accident, there's construction around exit 80. There's always construction somewhere around exit 80. And it just jams up that nice smooth ride, doesn't it? It disrupts everything. It's always something. But at least when you're on I-95, you can kind of anticipate it, because you know there's always something going on I-95. But so many times in our lives, unlike I-95, the disruptions are things that we don't anticipate them. We can't expect them. And we feel like we get off that nice, smooth path that we were on, and we were trying hard to stay on that smooth path. But we have to get off to deal with these distractions, these disruptions that happen in our lives. And maybe some of that stuff came up this morning as you were on your way to church. They could be minor things, they could be major things, right? But we always seem to be weighed down by some stuff. Always by some stuff. There's another expression. The expression is, stuff happens. Now, that's the PG version. I mean, you guys know what the unedited version is. But it's the same sentiment. Stuff happens. And the only way for stuff not to happen is to not have any stuff. But we have stuff, don't we? So it gets complicated. So we're going to look at Matthew chapter 11. We're going to start there. Matthew chapter 11, and we're going to start reading in verse 28. But as you're turning there, you guys got devices, you're there already. I mean, please. But it is not a stretch to assume that most of us are here because we want to follow God. We want to be like Jesus, right? I mean, otherwise, why would you be getting up, right? And that's what we're trying to do, but the stuff gets in the way. So let's look at Matthew chapter 11, starting in verse 28. It says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Okay, it seems sort of paradoxical to me. That's just me. But it's talking about easy and light, and that's just not how it feels to me, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the paradox. But first, what I'd like to do is talk about some of the things that happen, these complicating factors in our lives. And, I'm not telling you something that you don't know, but we need to be reminded. That's just how it is. Every week we take communion just as we did, and the Bible tells us to do that because God knows that we need to be reminded of what Jesus did for us. We're human beings. We got to be reminded frequently because otherwise we tend to forget what is and is not important. So we're going to talk about these complicating factors. And I'm just going to pick out 3 of them. There's dozens and dozens of them, okay? But I want to talk about our agenda. I want to talk about our relationships. I want to talk about our feelings, okay? Now, as I'm talking about it, I don't want you to get the impression that I'm saying that this stuff is worthless. It's not worthless. A lot of it is worthwhile stuff. We're human beings. We're made by God. He created an interesting world for us here, and we are to inhabit it. We're to interact with it. We're to enjoy it. God set it up that way. So it's not worthless stuff. But we can, and we do, complicate it, don't we? So let's talk about our agendas. Our agendas. What agendas do we have? Well, we have careers, right? We have personal improvement, whether we're going to the gym. I'm in the gym all the time, trying to beat back Father Time. I think he's winning, just not by as many points. There's our mental agenda. Maybe we're reading self-help books. We're in the Bible trying to be better people, right? There's emotional agendas. Maybe somebody is in therapy, and we're trying to do these things. Once again, not worthless stuff. Not worthless stuff. But sometimes we think we're following the path of God, but instead we're sort of dragging God behind us. We got our own self-established plan, our own self-established path, and we just want God to come with us, We want him to come along for the ride while we execute our plan. God can be in the back seat, enjoying the view, while we're driving the bus, right? And why? Well, it's simple. Because we know best, right? After all, we have lived with ourselves all our lives. So we know better, right? But here's the thing. How many times have things not gone the way that you planned for them to go? And 6 months or a year later, you look at the situation, you realize, hey, this all worked out. This all worked out. Maybe there was a particular job that you wanted badly. You really wanted that job, right? But you didn't get it. And a year later, you found out that the particular job that you really, really wanted was eliminated, or the new boss was somebody you couldn't work with, or something like that. And then a position that you never considered comes along, much better situation. Maybe it's better pay, better people, better hours, whatever it is. That's just an example of what can happen when we complicate our lives by putting God in the back seat. Now, personally, I'll tell you a story, okay? This is ancient history for some of you all. But we got to go back to 1981. Now, some of you know that I was an air traffic controller. I'm retired now. They don't let you run planes at my age. But I was an air traffic controller, and we collectively, nationwide, went on strike. We went on strike. And the President of the United States, I won't mention his name, fired every one of us. There were about 17,000 controllers nationwide. He fired 13,000 of us because that's how many of us walked out. Fired us for life. Now, understand, it's against the law to strike against the government. We knew that. We had signed affidavits saying that. But we thought we had some support where we didn't. We were fired for life. We were fired for life. And I remember sitting on a bench in the park. I lived on Long Island at the time, all alone, literally crying because I felt like I had just lost what I considered to be the best 8-hour job in America. Now, why would I call it the best 8-hour job in America? Well, the pay was great. You could only work 8 hours a day. There's no homework. You couldn't take anything home. And then when you told people you were an air traffic controller, they sort of went, ooh, that's nice. You know? So it was a great job. And I had lost it. Then, just to show you how complicating things can get and how we can wish this stuff upon ourselves, I walked out on my wife and daughter. Yeah, stupid. I know. Okay, I've accepted the fact that I was stupid. But I did it because I thought I had a better plan. I thought I had a better plan. That's another story for another day. That's a full-hour story right there by itself. But the bottom line is I wound up homeless and broke. Homeless and broke. I remember sleeping on a friend's couch, and it's a little gross, but I remember roaches crawling across me. I didn't have a place to stay. My wife asked me sometimes, what were you thinking? I wasn't thinking. I don't know what I was doing. But that's what happened. But God had a different and a better plan for me. And once I committed to following God's plan, everything came together for me. I was fired for life. I got my job back. I'd left my wife and my daughter. I got them back. And like the fairy tales say, I lived happily ever after. I did. Me and Job, lived happily ever after. See, we really don't know. We really don't know. We think we know, but we don't know. God knows. And if we'll just get out of the way, God will do what Matthew 11 says. He'll make our yoke easy and our burden light. Now, that still sort of twists my mind up a little bit, that concept. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the thing you have to ask yourself is, what exactly is your agenda? What is your agenda? We've all got an agenda. Let's not kid ourselves. If you think you don't have an agenda, look a little harder in the mirror, because you have an agenda. And an agenda is not necessarily a bad thing. But our agenda is a poor agenda unless it's God's agenda. You got to ask yourself, does my agenda match up with God's agenda, with God's plan, with God's strategy for our life? Is your agenda bringing you closer to God, or is it complicating your life? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about relationships. Oh, relationships. They can get complicated, right? So we got all kinds of relationships. We got parental relationships, where we're parenting our children. Or parental relationships where you're taking care of aging parents. You got relationships with your spouse, with other family members, with brothers and sisters in the church, with coworkers, with friends. And there could be a difference. You can have friends who are not part of the church. You got all these different kinds of relationships. And these relationships are many times very important to us. Nothing wrong with that. But we can, sometimes unwittingly, make them the most important relationships in our lives. But what's the Bible say? Luke chapter 14. Take a look. It says, starting in verse 25. See, I don't have to wait for you to turn. I know you're there already. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife, children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." So I'm not going to get into whether or not Jesus is into hate. I think we all know the answer to that. But it is clear that the most important relationship in our lives should be our relationship with God. That should be it. If we place any other relationship above our relationship with God, they call that idolatry. That's what they call it. And trust me, idolatry is going to complicate your life. Give me a second here. I got to hydrate. I got a sore throat from last night. So. This feels better. Got a couple of Ricolas in my pocket here just in case. So, anybody who knows me knows I'm into sports. That's obvious from last night. I'm glad you weren't there. You'd think a lot less of me as I was charging around the house. But I'm into sports. I love sports. I do. I love baseball, basketball, football, not quite as much. Tennis. I think it's all great stuff. I like the drama of it. I like the realness of it. Now, my first love is baseball. That's it. And baseball is called the national pastime because that's what it used to be. It's not the national pastime anymore. Football's king in America. It is. Football's king now. Maybe not to me. Maybe baseball's my first love. But in America, football is king. We are football crazy. If some of the women are not so much into football, just ask the guys sitting around you, and they'll tell you they can't wait for training camp to start, right? It's a training camp, and they can't wait for that to start. Now, I want you to stay with me on this, okay? The National Football League primarily plays its game on Sunday afternoons. Used to be exclusively on Sunday afternoons. But now they play Sunday nights, they play during the week at nights. Now, those Sunday games that they used to be at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, traditionally, as I said, they started at 1. But do you know why? They started at 1 o'clock because the NFL, like any other entity that's trying to sell a product, they wanted people to watch. And they knew that the majority of the people that were going to watch weren't available until 1 o'clock. They knew that because the vast majority of those people were in church. They knew that. Now, 1 o'clock, why 1 o'clock? Well, 77% of the population in the United States lived in the Eastern time zone or the Central time zone, okay? So 1 o'clock worked out great because these folks were in church. And I'm not saying that they were all disciples of Jesus, but they were in church. People went to church, okay? But guess what? Today, there are several games at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. 9 a.m. Eastern time, that is. Why? Because the NFL knows that today people are available to watch. They don't care why. They're just available to watch. And it's not because of a shift in demographics. See, there are twice as many people in the United States today as there were in the 50s and 60s. But still, 77% of them live in those same 2 time zones. See, the NFL knows our priorities. They know that we now have this idolatrous relationship with football. And we prioritize it even over faintly worshiping God. It's interesting because the NFL does not schedule games during the week, during the daytime hours. Why? Because they know we prioritize our jobs over football. They know that. Now think about that. Think about what that means. Think about where our priorities are at, collectively. Look, I'm not demonizing football. It's a business. They're doing what any good business should do. But understand, the NFL did not create this trend. They're just responding to it. They're simply following what we've established in our society with relationships. That's all they're doing. And this particular case is football, okay? And these relationships, whether with people or with things, and as I said, in this case it's football, can get in the way and therefore complicate our relationship with God. I don't want to mess up your enjoyment of football. I'm sure that you guys love it. I love it too, especially if the Giants are playing. But I'm just making a point. That we have to check out our relationships and see where they're at in terms of our relationship with God. There's a quote that I will take credit for because we don't know who said it. And it says, the greatest danger of idolatry comes not from what is bad, but from what is good. The greatest threat to what is best in our lives often comes from what is second best. You've got to ask yourself, are your relationships complicating your relationship with God? Okay, so we talked about our agendas, we talked about our relationships, right? Now we come to the one that hits home, right? We talk about our feelings. So I need some water before we talk about our feelings. And we're going to run through a few scriptures as we talk about our feelings. See, we all have feelings, right? And you know what that means? That means we can all get our feelings hurt. And I promise you this, you are going to get hurt. Even in the church, you're going to get hurt. Listen, I've been fighting to be a disciple for over 40 years. And trust me, sometimes it's a fight. It's a fight. And I've been hurt several times. I'm sure that many of you have been hurt several times too. And what is our reaction when we get hurt? What is our reaction? Anger, discouragement, retaliation. Sometimes we just sort of want to retreat into our own little world where we can't be hurt anymore. But let's go back to the Bible. Matthew chapter 5, what does it say? It says, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. You know, I appreciate what Chris had to say earlier, talking about how easily we can get hurt from anywhere, right? But I think sometimes when we get hurt in the church, it stings a little bit more, right? But the Bible says to let our light shine for the world to see. It's hard to have that light shine when we're hidden away. Look at Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12 says, in your struggle, this is verse 4, in your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, my son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. See, a lot of times, our hurt feelings is God disciplining us. He's trying to discipline us and teach us something. And why? Because he likes to see us in pain? No, because he loves us. That's what it says right here. I'm not saying that we need to be jumping up and down and celebrating when we get hurt. But we need to understand that God's discipline comes from a position of love. God loves us. He loves us. Look at Hebrews chapter 4 again, verse 15. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Now, I don't know you all personally. I doubt that any of us have been hurt or pushed to the extent that Jesus was. But he didn't complicate his life by getting angry or getting discouraged or retaliating or whatever. You fill in the blank. He didn't do any of that stuff. I know for me, when stuff happens in my life that didn't go well, that I didn't like or whatever, I try to examine myself personally and say, is there any responsibility that I had in this matter, right? That sounds like a very mature and thoughtful way to think about things, doesn't it? But do I do that with hurts in the church? You know, a lot of times, first thing that comes to my mind is that I'm right. I'm right. I'm without blame. Somebody else did this stuff. But the Bible says we're not perfect. All of sin falls short of the glory of God, right? That's what it says. But when these hurts come, do we react the way Jesus reacted? That's tough. It's tough to do. But that's the call. Let's take a quick look at how Jesus reacted. Matthew chapter 26. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man, arrest him. Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Do what you came for, friend." Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. You think Jesus was happy about what Judas was doing? You think he was hurt? Let's see. He protected this guy for 3 years. He fed him for 3 years. He made sure he had clothing for 3 years. He imparted his wisdom to him for 3 years. And this was Judas's response. And what was Jesus' reaction? He called him friend. I know that's not me. I mean, I know that's not me. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, that's very few of us who could do that. But that was Jesus' reaction. See, we have to push past the hurt. That's what Jesus did. And we're supposed to be trying to imitate him, right? Look, it's really not complicated. It's not. Now, it's not easy, but it's not complicated. Trying to be godly in a sinful world where sin is rewarded, where being a man or a woman of God is ridiculed, you'll be berated, and it's costly in terms of worldly values. It's not easy. It can be very, very hard, but it's not complicated. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength, right? And love your neighbor as yourself. It's not complicated, but it can be hard. Look at this quote. I would take credit for this one, but the guy's name is right under it, so I can't. It says, "There's no such complicated situation which people could not make more complicated." That's us. That's what we do. Let's go back and look at Matthew 11 again. We don't have to read the whole thing because we know we read it before, but let's take a look at what it says. It says, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, I know I talked about the seeming paradox that existed there, so let's examine that just a little bit. Jesus here assures us, right? He says it's going to be easy, it's going to be light. And yet, in the same breath, down in Matthew chapter 16, he tells us to take up our cross and follow him. I don't know about you, that sounds like heavy lifting to me. Doesn't sound easy, doesn't sound light. How can they both be true? See, the answer lies in who walks beside us. The burdens of the world, they are heavy, and they're filled with guilt and shame and all kinds of negative things. But with Jesus, we don't walk alone. But with his grace and strength, and he's the only one that can provide that for us. And yet, sometimes we do hesitate, right? Sometimes, despite the fact that we know all that, we do hesitate. We know that sacrifice is involved. We know that. Sacrifice is never easy. Never easy. If someone told me that I had to sacrifice watching Game 5 last night, never easy. Right? To surrender control, to place faith in something greater than ourselves, that's not a small thing. That's not a small thing. And sometimes we'll wonder, well, what am I going to have to give up? What's this going to cost me? But what if, in thinking that way, you're asking the wrong question? What if the real cost is in not following Jesus? And the Bible has plenty of examples. We don't have to put them up on the board today, but Matthew chapter 16 talks about what good is it for a man to gain the whole world but lose or forfeit his very soul. The rich young ruler in Matthew chapter 19. There's plenty of examples that the real cost is in not following Jesus. Right. See, following Jesus doesn't take away our joy. It restores our joy. The cross is not meant to crush us. It's meant to transform us. Let's let that sink in. Think about that for a while. See, when we stop seeing discipleship as an obligation and start seeing it as a privilege, then amazing things do happen. And the first disciples understood this, and we see some of the amazing things that they were able to do. So, as my wife would say, I'm going to try to land the plane here. There's two ways. There's our way, and there's God's way. Too often, they don't match up. And when they don't match up, what do we do? Once again, too often, we go our way. And then, guess what it becomes? Complicated. That's right. Right? Most of us know the saying, my way or the highway. And I don't know, I got a strange mind, so I always say to myself, well, who said that first? Who's the first person to say my way or the highway? I don't know if you ever wondered that. Well, I found out who said it first. Acts chapter 4, verse 12. Salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. God said it first. He said it first. It's our choice. God, in his infinite wisdom, has allowed us to decide what we want to do. Let's think about that. He's such a great God, such a loving God, so I'm going to let you do what you want to do. So what's our choice? We can choose our way and inherit all the complications that go with it. Or we can go God's way. And as it says in Philippians 4:7, and we don't have to read the whole thing, but there it is. We can enjoy the peace which transcends all understanding. Think about that phrase for a minute. I don't even know what it means, but it sounds good. Transcends all understanding. That's what it says. You know, years ago, I was driving on the road and I saw this billboard. Maybe some of you have seen it. But I remember when I saw it, I almost had to pull over and think about it for a little while because it was so insightful. And this is what it looked like. It looked like that. It said, no God, no peace. No God, no peace. See, it may be unpopular. It may be discouraged by society. It might be ostracizing. It could be lonely at times. It could be difficult. It could even be controversial. But one thing it's not. It's not complicated. It's not complicated. It's God's way. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, right? And lean not on your own understanding. In all his ways acknowledge him. And what will he do? He will make your paths straight. I thank you guys. It's an honor to come up here. I love you guys. Love this church. Thank you. Appreciate you guys.